Okay, so if we go back a few years, the Viceroy tool is a tool that was developed probably 3 to 4 years ago, and it continues to be a very popular tool. What's nice about it is primarily for outside diameter turning, but you just lay it on the rest and traverse back and forth. So when we reverse turn this, I drew in a pencil line of the diameter I need for the cold jaws. So we're just going to take this down a little bit. I like to have the tool at center, the cutting tip at center. And we're at 1200 RPM. One thing, I don't know if this shows up. Does this show up on here? It's got a little shelf to the right side of the cutter. We could have one meeting. The that when you're feeding from left to right, that limits your depth of cut. So it makes it a fairly easy tool to control. This tool will skate if you go from right to left. So it's easily controlled if you expect it, but just want to make you aware that that could happen. Now another tool we're working on currently, it's a prototype. We're going to call it the stabilizer, and it's still really somewhat being developed. But a tool with all this width here, it just will not vibrate and chatter on you. It's an easy tool to control. And what we're going to do is, let's see, where's my ruler? Roughly, that steel right there is all extra steel. So put that down here, see? That's all extra steel on there. So we're going to take that off. And then as you're starting to do the hollowing process with it, you don't need all that bulk steel out there in front. But the further you get over the rest, the more steel you have, so it becomes a stronger tool. So, it didn't take me any time just really to get this down to size. I wasn't really trying to do any kind of surface finish. Now this tool uses a little larger cutter. And I drop the handle on it, so I'm actually riding the bevel on the carbide, and it gets a much smoother finish. So let's see. Who's got the pieces, the tubular one that
There's a bunch of them right here.
Okay, the one on the right side. No,
One more.
one more right. No, next right.
Oh.
That one. Let me just kind of mark that off. Oh, that light helps.
We like to make it challenging for you, Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, are you turning that end grain or what's the grain orientation on your black?
This will be end grain, that's correct. Yeah. Okay, I put that parting cut in there just to for a reference. So, you know, if we look at this bowl, the bottom dimension is slightly smaller, not much smaller than the top diameter, and then, you know, just a nice little convex shape. So we don't have to be fussy on that convex shape, concave shape. My personal preference is for a long handle, and you know, when I was doing that turning, you know, I had this tucked into my stomach, and you know, was turning with my body so to get that radius in there. And then those of you that have seen me turn in the past, you know, I'm a big proponent of negative rake scrapers. With these tools, you know, if you're a Mike Mahoney or a Trent Bosch, you know, you can take these tools and really get a nice, clean cut. I don't have that much, my tool control is not that good. So what I do is I use negative rake scrapers to get a cleaner cut. And we pretty much have the outside ready. Now there's one thing I want to check before we go too far. We need a hook right there. Okay. Yeah. Just want to check to make sure we're at the right size, because you don't want to see me just adjusting the cold jaws when we reverse it. So, this is probably one of the more popular tools that we sell. This is what we call the Viceroy. It's the 1/2 inch size and the 5/8 size. You can see where the 5/8 is a good, strong depth of cut tool. You can go much further over the rest versus with the 1/2 inch. But for most of us, this 1/2 inch is about all we need.
Turn it, when you put it up there, turn it so the head faces the camera. No, twist it.
Oh, this way?
There.
Okay. So they're basically the same tool, same pattern, or same nose geometry. The only difference is the size of the shank. All right, since we're getting closer to the chuck, it's always a good idea to spin this around, make sure you're clear of everything. I don't know if this shows up on the camera, but there's a chip in the carbide right there. Does that show up on the camera? No. Let's swing that around. It's right.
When you put it on the wood, turn it towards the, angle it towards me, there.
It's right there.
Now your hand's in the way.
Yeah, well, it's about the 11 o'clock, looking down on it, it's about the 11 o'clock position, so we'll send that around and not use that tool.
You can't rotate it?
One thing about these tools, carbide can be fragile and chip fairly easy. So when you use these, carbide in compression is very strong. So the way we're presenting these tools to the wood, it's all in compression, so it's a very strong piece of carbide. But when you store the tools like I do and you just throw them in the tool row, they're going to chip. But fortunately, I've got a good source, so I know where to get them. So, okay, this one's fairly new. This is the same tool, just a different handle. Okay, so we pretty well have the bottom set up for that flare on the inside, and we'll finish that cup, once we reverse turn it and have access to where the jaws are. So, well, there should be an end on here somewhere. There it is. Okay. This is I don't know how long I've had this drill bit. I used to call on machine shops, and this is one from a machine shop. It's got the number 2 Morse taper already built into it. And I'm a tool junkie. Often I go to these used tool stores, and you can dig through their junk and you can find a tool, with the number 2 on there. I've never sharpened it. It's just it just cuts. So. And I've always found when drilling, you make a little hole for the drill, it always seems to work better. drilling, we're going to turn it down a little bit. I've been running about 1300. We'll put her about 700 for drilling. Always a good idea to back it out, clean the chips. You clear these chips, depending on the wood, sometimes that drill point can be pretty hot. And my lathe at home, for some reason, I cannot get this tailstock tight. So when I'm drilling or doing something like this, I always have to watch to make sure the tailstock doesn't move back. Okay, oops. That's not supposed to happen, so cut that out.
Well, I shut it off.
Okay.
That was showing what not to do.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so for the hollowing process, one of the ideal tools to use is the one that's going around with the chip, but that's not an option now.
Is this still the Viceroy?
This is still the Viceroy, the 5/8. I'm slightly above center right now, which is not bad, but I'm going to drop it down just a little bit. In the hollowing process, you either want to be on center, and it's even okay to be slightly above being like 1/16 above center. That way, if you get a catch, as the part's turning, you're turning to a wider portion, so it's going to be a less severe catch. And that's true whether it's high-speed steel or carbide. It just rolls out of the way. So for hollowing, anybody want to come up here and try this? Variety of tools you can use. One that I really like is this one here. It's the one we're going to call the stabilizer. And the history on this is one of the very first tools I made. But I had a number 4 cutter on it, the large one that's about a 1/2 inch in diameter. And this is a handle I made when I first started the business. I was not a very good turner then, only slightly better now. But I just had it modified to hold the number 1 cutter with the Viceroy nose geometry. And what I like about it This thing is just stable. What's the horsepower on this machine, do you know? 2? We could probably stall it out. But you can see you don't have to baby the cutter. Let's see where we're at down in here. So for the true hollowing process, let's see what we've got. Shouldn't have put that tape out there.
That's good tape.
It is. Okay, so we've got a lot of wall thickness down here at the bottom. And we're in good shape down here, so we got a lot to play with. So for the true hollowing process, if this was, say, a smaller diameter like a vase or a hollow form that we're working in, you need a tool. There are outside diameter cutting tools and inside diameter cutting tools. So for example, this one is not a very good inside diameter cutting tool because the cutter is smaller than the shaft. Whereas this one, the cutter is larger than the shaft, so it can actually reach inside and get a bite on what we're hollowing. And to further complicate it, inside diameter tools can turn outside diameter work. Outside diameter tools cannot do inside diameter work. Unless it's like a bowl or a platter. You know, the inside of a bowl where you've got a lot of reach or a lot of it exposed, then you can use either one, or a platter. Robert, where are you at? You know, this is one of the tools you bought tonight. This is the number 5. It's what we call the Badger straight tool. And you see how I slowed down the cut? And where I don't have the pull out from prior cuts, you can see that's very smooth in there. So we'll just do a couple more cuts, see if we can smooth it up a little. On this tool, you turn it at about a 45-degree angle. You don't run it this way. About a 45-degree angle. Slow your feed rate down, your depth of cut. Give the tool time to cut. Now, if I was Trent Bosch or Mike Mahoney, I wouldn't have any undulations in there at all. This area here, that'll clean up. Really, the undulations are pretty good. I don't have too many.
Surprised yourself.
Yeah. That's after, 2 cups of coffee this
Right,
morning.
that's
Let's see if we can do a third cut.
don't push your luck.
And I've got it running fairly fast. Myself, I like to turn quick. It's running at 2370 right now. And in my mind, as long as it's safe for the wood, the wood is solid, you're not standing in the line of fire, you're going to be okay.
That's why we wear a face mask.
Yeah, and that's why we also wear a face mask. In fact, on the one that's, let's see, the bigger one right there, Hal? Yeah, that one there. Turning in reverse is getting to be more popular. So my lathe has reverse, and I was doing my finish cuts in reverse. But, one thing when you're turning in reverse, that little set screw that they have on the chuck, you always want to tighten that up, which I didn't do. So I got a nice big catch on this one, and it came out in 2 chunks. So it got, I epoxied it back together, and that's the finished piece with the epoxy. So, one last cut, and we're going to call it good. So you can see how that area is starting to clean up. And I think really all what's in there will sand out pretty easy. So what we need to do now is just reverse turn this and do the bottom. I should have an Allen chuck somewhere. Maybe it's in there yet. Before if this was going to be one go to turning, obviously you would sand it, put your finish on whatever you want to do on the inside and on the outside, as much as possible at that point. I don't know if that's good for the chuck or not, but that's the way I do it. So a lot of us, I now have a vacuum chuck, so I go to a vacuum chuck whenever possible. A lot of us starting out, you buy the basic set of jaws, and which includes the cold jaws. And if this was a finished piece, I would wrap some tape around this, so it wouldn't mar here. Okay, and for safety's sake, I always use a tailstock where possible. So just to make it easy, this diameter here, where my chuck was, that's going to be the diameter of the foot. Or something just below it, rather. Let's just put it that way. Doesn't seem right. Is that to you?
Number 2 more.
Yeah, it's a number 2 Morse. Well, it worked the other day in Hot Springs. So. Let me put a different tailstock on there.
Sounded better.
That sounds better. Okay. So Mo, where'd she go? I think this is the tool that you have, the number 1 taper. Again, this is an inside diameter tool. It works very good on the outside.
You also present that at a 45 degree?
Yeah, again, you want to present this at the 45-degree angle. And my last cuts, I was actually riding the bevel on the carbide. You see how I turned it to about a 30-degree angle? So I'm riding the bevel on the carbide. That's a bit of a dangerous cut. If you're not skilled in turning it to get the ride the bevel, you'll get a nice catch on that thing and you'll throw that tool out so quick. But, for the most part, we've got this finished in here now on the bottom. So now all we need to do is just work on the inside.
What tool is that?
This is what we call the number 1 taper tool. It's part of that 3-piece set. A lot of people buy the 3-piece Christmas ornament set. This is the first one you use to open it up for the diameter. And a lot of people pick up this tool to be a first go-to tool for a lot of small diameter turnings. So again, we're going to work inside right here on this area here. that's going to be the foot of the bowl. Take a little more off. I'm going to take a little more off. You can see right here where the chuck jaws were. So we'll see if we can take a little more off of that diameter just to remove that. So, if we get rid of this middle portion here without flipping this out of the chuck, we're home free. Just play it safe. Yeah. We're in pretty good shape with this cut because we're pushing towards the chuck. You know, we're not pulling away from the chuck. So at this point you want to just do some basic metalworking principles and turn towards the chuck. So, basically we're done with this tool, or with this turning. I always like to put some lines in the bottom. It's basically, I call it a little detail or beading tool. And what it does, it's just got a nice sharp little point on there.
Put it right on the toe rest.
And I think the nose on that is about 16,000. 16,000. So,
Is that carbide?
Carbide.
Okay.
And you can reverse it. It's got another tip on the back side. For $80 you can't go too wrong. And you can cut coves and beads with it for those that have that skill, which I don't. So, anyways. That's what we got.
Right on the toe rest.
Right there?
Yeah. Hold on. Tip it towards me. Very good. Thank you.
All right. That's it.